Welcome back to our Mussar Study Group. I'm Batya Gage. So glad that you have joined us this afternoon as we work on strengthening our midot, our character traits. Well, I hope you are enjoying the weather wherever you are. It's starting to get warmer here in Texas consistently, and I am ready to get outside tomorrow maybe and get some much needed vitamin D. And I hope maybe where you are, maybe you're getting a little sunshine too. Well, 23 days until Purim. Purim is such a fun time. My husband and I, will be hosting the Purim party this year at our home, and looking forward to that and having all of y'all here with us that are local. And then Purim ushers in a kind of month-long period of Passover preparation. So always a lot going on the Jewish cycle on the calendar. Well, we are finishing up our book, The Spiritual Practices of Good Actions, today. You know, you would think that for us that worship Hashem, believe in Hashem, are obedient to him, you would think it would be natural to be in awe all the time. But even as we study our Torah portions last week and this week, the Israelites saw the sea open before them. Were they in awe? What was the next thing they did? They were in awe for about a minute, and then they went right back to complaining because they had no food or water. Children, on the other hand, tend to have a natural sense of wonder and awe about everything around them. They pick up a rock, they look at a leaf, a funny-looking bug running through the water sprinklers, eating watermelon. Everything is just a wonder to them. But somewhere along the way, as we mature, we lose that sense of awe. Our book says, the one that Spiritual Practices says, that wonder is a battery that never runs out of power. And when you learn to tap into it, you'll never run out of spiritual energy. And that's what we need. So like I said, this is our last chapter of this particular book. Last week, we looked at the flip side of this coin of Yirah, and which was the fear of punishment. And so this week, we're going to turn that coin over and look at Yirah from the perspective of that feeling that you get when you realize how small you are and how mighty Hashem is. I posted a video on both the Facebook group and the Signal group that kind of does it for me. I watch this video about twice a year. It's by Lou Giglio, and it's called If the Earth Were a Golf Ball. And he goes into a whole teaching on if the Earth were the size of a golf ball, and he looks at all the planets and how little we really are compared to those other planets. And it just really gives you a sense of awe, of wonder. It makes me, every time I watch the video, it makes me want to quote this Psalm. Psalm 8. When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have ordained, what is man that you are mindful of him? We all know we have studied many times that every single person has a spark of the divine in them. Even Pharaoh, we learned recently. But also, if we open our eyes, other things, especially in nature, especially God's creation, have a spark of the divine in them as well. Trees, flowers, animals, butterflies, babies. When we see these things, we're reminded that there is something higher, greater than this little earth. And we begin to think outside of our own little world. The Baal Shem Tov said, the world is full of wonders and miracles, but we take our little hand and we cover our eyes and we see nothing. How sad. So, what exactly is this midah of Yirah? Our book defines it as a referential respect with an element of dread or wonder. Awe is about appreciating your place in the endless possibility of the universe. When you look at the video of Lou Giglio and you see how tiny you are in this big universe, it kind of does put a little fear and dread within you. In the Talmud, Barachot 28b, it says this: know before whom you stand. If we really understood that, that would instill some fear and dread and wonder within us. These same words, know before whom you stand, is often written in many synagogues above the ark where the Torah is stored, to remind people how to behave in the synagogue. That they need to behave with a certain amount of decorum because they need to remember before whom they are standing. Abraham Joshua Heschel taught that we should cultivate an awareness of the divine everywhere we go. You know, in our congregation, we have 3 sets of brand new parents, and it's so fun to watch them with these new babies. You know, watching a new baby grow and learn everything they learn to do, it just inspires awe within you. But also, as they experience the wonders of the world, it reminds the parents to also experience that wonder and that awe again, all new and all fresh. Awe can help us find the sacred in the ordinary, in the everyday things of life, just as children do. Awe can also inspire us. It can inspire us to be better people. It reminds us that, of course, our role in the world is very, very small, especially when you look at where we are over time, history, and space. And I hope I don't get into trouble here, but no matter what you believe about climate change, you just have to wonder how much effect we human beings can really have on the climate of the earth, the universe that Hashem created. Genesis 8:22 says, while the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, winter and summer, day and night shall not cease. Not that we shouldn't take good care of the earth, but it just makes you wonder, how much power do we really have to affect the climate or anything else? We can't stop a hurricane from coming. We have very little effect on making it rain when we need to. So it just makes you wonder. We can also see, even in our current situation with this multi-year now pandemic, how little power we humans really have. No amount of money, power, influence can heal a person from some terminal illness. Only Hashem can really heal a person. And when we really understand that, we begin to see awe in everyday, ordinary things. Taking a deep breath, eating a juicy orange, seeing the moon, the full moon every month. For each of us, it is something different that inspires that awe in us. In my bedroom, I have big double windows, glass sliding door, and I have blackout curtains most of the time. But during the 2, 3, 4 days of the month when the moon is full, man, I open those curtains all the way because the moon is situated such that it shines right in on my bed. And every single month I see that full bright moon, I just get in awe all over again. For you, it might be something different. Another one for me is standing on the beach and just looking out and hearing the waves. For you, it could be something else. We're all very unique in what can inspire us to those feelings of awe. So, can we possibly have too much awe? Can we have too much? Like every trait, though, Yirah must be balanced. If we have too much Yirah, we become so heavenly focused, we are no earthly good, right? We become disconnected from the world around us. We don't take action. Um, we don't do. I mean, Mussar says that our primary duty is to kun olam, to repair the earth. But if we have too much awe, we're not seeing that. It can lead us to rigidity, being too rigid. Our book gives us an example uh, of a story about some ultra Orthodox men who actually spat on a little 8-year-old girl because she wasn't dressed modestly enough to suit them. And the book goes on to say that a Torah scholar who initiates such unseemly and unethical behavior is reminiscent of men schooled in duties of the heart who study Torah for prestige, but do not endeavor to correct their own personal faults, neglecting the study of the fundamentals of the religion and the foundations of Torah. One simply cannot fulfill the commandments. Our author says that one thing that is a source of awe for him, his unique thing, is the text itself, Duties of the Heart. It was written around 1040 in Judeo-Arabic, 400 years before the printing press. So that means it was written on animal skins, and somehow it was sufficiently copied and preserved and passed down until we can still benefit from it today. And one of the most amazing things is that the descriptions of human behavior in that text are spot on today. Human behavior hasn't changed really all that much. I've ordered that. It's a 2-volume set, and I'm actually looking at that for a possible text for a future Mussar class. What about if we have too little awe? I used to my children and grandchildren, hand out a little pendant, which was a wagon wheel. And I tried to explain to them, remember always, on the wagon wheel, you are just a spoke. You are not the hub. Hashem is the hub. We are not the hub of the wagon wheel. If we have too little awe, we begin to think that we are the center of the universe and everything revolves around us. And we're only motivated by things that benefit us, that we're just become very self-focused. We overestimate our importance in this world. And it kind of leads us to treat others not very kindly. Too little awe can also lead to that feeling of, why are we here? What is the purpose? What is man's purpose here on earth? So without that feeling of awe, we just feel meaningless. Awe is what gives purpose and meaning to our existence here on earth. Rabbi Eliezer in Pirkei Avot 3:17 says, where there is no wisdom, there is no awe. And where there is no awe, there is no wisdom. And then he goes on to explain and use the analogy of a tree. He says, one who has great deeds, but not very much wisdom, what can he be compared to? To a tree that has great roots, many, many roots, but maybe it just has a few scraggly branches. But its roots are so deep that the storms can come and it is strong, it is okay. But the tree that has a lot of wisdom but no deeds is the opposite. It has great, beautiful, bushy branches, but very few roots. And the first wind that comes along and it just topples over. He goes on to quote Jeremiah 17:8, which says, I love this verse, he shall be as a tree planted upon water. Of course, we know that water is always a symbolism for Torah. Who spreads his roots by the river, who fears not when comes heat, whose leaf is ever lush, who worries not in a year of drought, and ceases not to yield fruit. So awe allows us to become that tree with its roots deep. And when we are filled with awe of Hashem, of his majesty, we have an infinite source to draw upon, to when times get hard, when things get dark, when things feel hopeless, we have that infinite resource to draw upon. Yes, awe does make us feel small, but it also reminds us that even though small, we have a very important place in the plan of space and time, of history, of Hashem's plan. If you think about a big machinery, a car, a watch, anything else, even the tiniest little piece that gets out of whack or stops working, it can affect the whole thing. So even though we have a small place, we have a place. Moshe said to Hashem in a recent Torah portion, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh?" But Hashem answered, "I will be with you." And if Hashem is with us, then our place is important. Our author describes a time when he was driving along and he was feeling very stressed by the events of life or the day or whatever. And I don't know if you've ever had this feeling. I have a time or two. Your peripheral vision just begins to close in and it becomes dark and you feel like you're in a tunnel. It's a very classic panic attack. He said he felt like it was his evil inclination trying to cut him off from the outside world. He says later on, when he got home and was trying to relax, he went for a walk outside. And, at first he was just still kind of in that tunnel. But as he began to let that all go, he began to hear the birds sing. And he said it was like turning on a radio. The birds were already there singing, but his ears couldn't hear it until he began to tune in and to listen to it. And that's what we have to do. We have to tune our ears in. So as we come to the conclusion of this Spiritual Practices book, we are reminded that Yirah, the trait of Yirah, is the knot that holds the pearls of all of our traits on the string. Without Yirah, the traits would just separate and disappear. On the other hand, with only Yirah, we just have a knot on a string, no pearls. The Mussar book says, from the ways of the Tzaddikim, says it this way: Yirah secures all of the good traits, and if you remove it, all of the good traits will depart from you. And if you do not have good traits, you do not have Torah and mitzvot. For all of Torah hinges upon the perfection of one's traits. Wow. A sense of awe and wonder of being part of something bigger and greater motivates us to set the bar higher for ourselves, to try and reach a better level, a higher level. Our author asks us to remember back, if you remember back in chapter 1, the graph that some of you may have went online and done, or you may have drawn your own, where your traits were at that time. I encourage you to go back and retake that test, see if it's changed any, see if it is balanced out a little more. But one thing he wants to remind us of is, do you remember the dotted line that went around halfway between the outer and the inner? That was the perfect balance of every trait. Now, of course, we know that perfection is not humanly attainable, but it's our higher bar that we can work towards, try to set for ourselves to achieve. I mean, we learned that we are to be like our Creator. He is kind, so we should be kind. He is merciful, so we should be merciful, and so on. And awesome is that dotted line of perfect balance. The trait of awe, the trait of Yirah, can give us that little nudge we need to reach up a little higher, to go a little farther, do a little more. We can search the scriptures and find a few examples of people that had an incredible encounter with the divine presence. And usually when you read about this encounter, one of the first things that happens, they fall on their face, speechless. And our book suggests, and I agree, that that is why in the Amidah, when we come to that place where we're standing symbolically in the Holy of Holies, we should have that feeling. And so the first prayer that we say is, open my lips that my mouth declare your praise. Because can you imagine being in that place of divine presence? It is very likely that most of us would be dumbstruck on our face, having no words. So we have to ask Hashem in that moment, open my lips that I can even speak your praises. Our chapter ends with an idea that too much fear keeps us in our comfort zone, but awe can inspire us to get outside that comfort zone. Yes, we talked last week, having a baby can be fearful, especially for the first time. But raising a child is so awe-inspiring. As we watch them, imagine us holding their hands as they're taking their first few steps. It's just awe-inspiring to raise children. Rabbi Tarfon in Pirkei Avot 2:16 says something interesting. It is not incumbent on you to complete the task, but neither are you at liberty to desist from it. You know, our life's work may not be completed in our lifetime. Moshe's wasn't. He didn't get to see he didn't get to lead the people into the promised land. He could see it from the mountaintop. And so he probably had a sense that he didn't complete the task. And as much as I love to check things off my list, if I do something and I haven't written it on my list, I write it on there just so I can check it off. But some of the greater things that we work to achieve in life may not be completed in this lifetime, but neither does that give us an excuse for not doing it. We can still work towards that goal. Our book gives us some daily practices. If this is your meet off for the week, of course, the first thing you want to do is come up with a reminder phrase. My suggestion might be Psalm 8. Who is man that you are mindful of him? The next thing is to observe. Observe where you are now. How does awe fit into your life now? Where do you see it? What causes you to feel awe? Or maybe you're struggling with finding awe at all, and nothing is sacred. Nothing feels holy. Either way, record wherever you are in your journal. If you're struggling to put this into action, if you're struggling with low feelings of awe, one good place to start is to get outside, get out into nature. Being out in nature just naturally brings a sense of awe and peace. One of the things I thought was really interesting, it said, look for patterns in nature, in leaves, in birds, in waves. There's always patterns, and those patterns remind us that the universe has a design. It has a creator. The next thing to act is to pray. Abraham Joshua Heschel, again, says to pray is to take notice of the wonder, to regain a sense of the mystery. If you think about it, just the act of praying is kind of a sense of awe, of reaching out to this great and awesome being, Hashem. It says, on the other hand, if you're stuck, you can't speak, you can't pray these words. Open my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. And one of my favorites is music. Sing, listen to music. Rabbi Nachman says the most direct way to attach ourselves to God in this material world is through music and song. Rabbi Trugman starts all his YouTube video teachings with a nigun. He sings the nigun before he ever gets into the teaching. Music reaches our soul much more directly and can quickly inspire awe in most of us. Well, that is the conclusion of that book. Our author reminds us that Mussar is not always a straight journey. We take a step forward, then we still take a step back. We go up the incline and then slide back. We're always working towards, we're always working our curriculum. When do we graduate from that curriculum? When we die. And we're not in a hurry to graduate. So just keep working the curriculum, never give up. He talks in the book about some of his students that took 3 years to begin making progress and more. So just never quit, never give up. Although, we are completing a book today, but Mussar continues on forever and ever. We're going to take a few weeks off, but Mussar never takes a day off. Work it every day. Okay, let's switch to our other book. This is our Mussar Torah commentary. We're still in some pretty exciting stories in the Torah portion. Last week we had the splitting of the Red Sea. This week we have the giving of the Ten Commandments. It's all just an exciting time to study the Torah portions. When someone tells us that their loved one has died, we say, Baruch Dayan Emet, which means blessed is the true judge, or blessed is the one who judges truthfully. Our commentary this week starts with a very sad story by Rabbi Glass. His cousin had lost her son to death and now her husband. And at the funeral, she turns to him and says, "Where's your God now? Where's his truth in this moment?" And he says that he couldn't answer. And we've all probably been there. We've probably all been in a difficult grieving period and said, where are you, God? Where is your truth now? Or we've heard people say that, and we had no response to them. And Rabbi Glass said he was the same way. He had no reasonable response to her question. Rabbi Kushner says this about Emet, that Emet, truth, is God's way of seeing the world. We may think of truth as the correctness of facts, or we may think of it as our way of seeing the world. But our commentary says that Emet is a way of being in the world. Pure or absolute Emet is not humanly possible. I posted a picture on Facebook and on Signal of a cylinder. And if you stand to the side of the cylinder, you might see a square. If you stand to the end of the cylinder, you probably see a circle. So it just depends on where you're standing, what truth is to you. But Hashem is the only one that can see every side, all of time, all of space, all at one time. Our commentary points out that Mussar teachers have different perspectives on this whole midah of Emet. Some see it as focusing on being honest, being reliable. Others see it as more of a respectful regard for what is apparent and what is hidden, what is undetected, what's obvious as well as maybe what's hidden, what we don't see. Batya Gallant is a teacher at Darchei Binah Seminary in Jerusalem, and she says that growth in the midah of Emet requires recognizing the illusions we may be holding on to and discarding them. The shedding of illusions is a lifelong struggle. Like spiritual growth requires courage to move beyond our natural inclination and ultimately, she says, to perceive the finite as thoroughly informed by the infinite. The author of our commentary this week says that his particular interpretation of the midah of Emet is based on the actual composition of the Hebrew word itself. Emet is made up of the letters Aleph, Mem, Tav. Aleph is the first letter of the alphabet. Mem is the middle, and Tav, of course, is the end. So the author's interpretation of Emet is a beginning to end whole picture view of reality. The Midah of Emet asks us to assess, judge, inform, teach, speak, observe, listen, think, behave toward acknowledgement of the fullness of life and all its complexities as we see it where we are standing, as well as where others may be standing and what they see. And he calls this the whole picture awareness of truth. And he says it can be found in our Torah portion this week. And he gives us some examples from the choice of Moshe's names for his sons all the way through the giving of the actual Ten Commandments. So Moshe's sons are Gershom and Eleazar. Now, Gershom means I have been a stranger in a foreign land. And Eleazar means my ancestors' God has been my help. These choices of names reveal Moshe's ability to accept life in its entirety, the good and the bad. It says that life includes good and bad, alienation, separation, danger, as well as spiritual intimacy. So Moshe has this whole picture awareness of life's realities. He's not some, Pollyanna that just floats around on a cloud and sees the good. He sees both. And he's named his children based on this reality. Now, when Moshe talks to his father-in-law, Yitro, again, he has this whole picture awareness of truth. He reports to Yitro all the wondrous miracles that Hashem has wrought. But he also tells Yitro all of the hardships that they're going through. And that's in Exodus 18. So he's teaching us that life is a series of give and take, good and bad, ups and downs. Think about if we win a contest or we're given an honor, someone else lost out. Maybe they lost an opportunity that would have brought great change to their life. Then when we go and we look at the Ten Commandments, Emet is again listed as actually one of the Ten Commandments. We are instructed, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Exodus 20:13. Emet, is a central principle of Jewish belief in life. And testimony that is given has to be completely truthful from beginning to end without anything left out. So you can't just tell part of the truth. You have to tell the whole picture. So our commentary ends this discussion of the whole picture awareness approach of Emet with an interesting poem. If you choose to read that, I will let you read that on your own. So instead, I would like to leave you this week with some of my own personal thoughts. Most of us live in a place where our strongly held beliefs and opinions are our truth. Many of us can probably remember a time, maybe not so long ago, where we believed other things very strongly. Perhaps that the law had been done away with, or some other strongly held belief. Then we moved, things changed, whatever, and now we hold strongly different beliefs. And, just like the picture of the cylinder, if you stand in one place, you see a circle. If you stand in a different place, you see a square. But both are accurate, but neither are the truth. And both sides will argue passionately. Yes, it's a square. No, it's round. What's wrong with you? And they'll argue and argue until they have no breath left. What they cannot do is see it from the other person's perspective. And if we are going to ever get the whole picture awareness, we have to be able to listen to the other side. We have to be able to take a risk and see if we can see this picture from the other person's perspective so that we can ever have a chance at this whole picture awareness of Emet. So our commentary gives us some questions to ask ourselves if this is your midah for the week. Um, how do you feel when you hear a report about someone that leaves out details that you know would affect the whole picture of the story? When are you reminded or tempted to leave out part of the facts to kind of shape this picture of the truth? Can you recall learning new details about someone's life that turns your understanding around, maybe from negative to positive? How was your negative judgment formed in the first place? Was it based on just partial facts, standing in one place but not seeing perspective from the other point of view? How has encountering a new perspective changed you? Then to put this midah of Emet into practice this week, it suggests spending some time noticing when you have made a negative judgment, perhaps about yourself. Perhaps you were leaving out part of the whole story about yourself. You're just focusing on your weaknesses and not on your strengths. Do the same thing for your judgments of other people. Are you just looking at their faults? Perhaps you're just looking at their strengths and you're not seeing the whole picture. Notice, are you saying one thing with your mouth but another thing in your heart? And how would it feel if those two were aligned? Another practice for this week is practice saying, I don't know, but I'll try to find out. For some of us, that's very hard to say. We want to have an answer, so we come up with something, but I don't know is a good answer. And it also suggests spending some time exploring the meaning of Psalm 145:18. Hashem is near to all who call upon him, to all who call upon him in Emet, in truth. Well, that is our Torah Mussar commentary lesson for the week as well. And we're at the end of this session of our Mussar Study Group period, at least with our current book, Spiritual Practices. To finish up spiritual practices, remember we studied the other side of the coin of Yirah. We looked at being in awe of the majesty of Hashem. The more we are in awe of Hashem, the smaller we feel. But even though we feel small, we know we still have an important place in this bigger plan. In our Mussar Torah commentary, we looked at Emet from the perspective of the whole picture awareness. We may firmly believe that something is the truth, but only Hashem can see everything, every side, all things, all at one time. If we want to move closer to that type of Emet, we're going to have to take a chance, a risk, and listen to the other side of the story. I have really enjoyed spending this time with you every Tuesday afternoon. We will be taking hopefully a short break, and right now my plan is to come back after Purim. I need to spend some time helping my husband regain his health, and also spending some time focusing on my board member duties at Magen Yishenu, as we are busily looking at many buildings and trying to find the perfect place for us to have a physical home. And so right now I'm looking at hopefully after Purim, shortly after Purim, somewhere in there. I'm also in the process of reviewing some pretty heavy duty texts. I like to go from light to heavy, or modern to ancient. And so our next text would be something ancient, something really deep. So think about that, get prepared for that. But remember that don't forget that your Mussar Torah commentary continues on. So what I would like to do, and I hope you will do it too, is continue reading that book each week. And whatever you glean from that, whatever sticks out to you, whatever you learn from that, just make a little post in either the Facebook page or the Signal page. And that way we can kind of stay in touch and kind of still hold each other accountable that we're still working on this Mussar thing, because Mussar never stops. Perfecting our Midot never stops. If you would like to share this video with someone, I encourage you to do so. Stay in touch with each other through whatever means you have. Never stop journaling. And again, thank you for sharing these Tuesday afternoons with me. And hopefully we'll be back together soon. And have a fantastic week.